Please rise for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Alderman Brocart.
Here.
Alderwoman Ravenscraft.
Here.
Alderwoman Colbert.
Here.
Alderman Bell.
Here.
Alderman Wilson.
Here.
And Alderman Lewis.
Here.
Can I get a motion for approval of October 29th, 2024 meeting minutes, please?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Can I get a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second, Alderman Bell. All in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to special items, we have a presentation for CBiz. We'll turn it over to him.
You still hear us, Ryan? You're muted.
Yes, I can. Am I on?
You are on.
All right. I will share my screen and we'll go from there. Okay. So really, the goal of today is to give you a really good, I guess, sense of the process methodology that we went through as part of this compensation study, talk through some of our findings, results, implementation, and then we should have some time for any questions at the end. So I'll give you a brief introduction about CBiz real quick before we dive into the agenda. We are a national compensation consultant practice. We're based in St. Louis, Missouri. But we do serve, clients all across the U.S. coast to coast. But of course, we do a lot of work in the Midwest, Missouri area, and surrounding states. We do a lot of work with the public sector, so have a good amount of experience working with other cities, counties, governmental agencies. So certainly enjoyed working with the city of Ashland throughout the project. As you can see on the screen, my name is Ryan Blackwell. I'm the director on the team. I served as really the project lead from the CBiz side, and I was assisted by my colleague Gabby, who can't make it tonight, but certainly a crucial part of the analysis on our end. So the overall agenda today, project overview, which includes methodology, findings, results. We'll walk through our recommendations for the city and just how to go about implementing the new compensation system. And then, like I said, answer some questions at the very end if there are any. So the scope of the study was pretty in-depth. I mean, overall, I'd call it a comprehensive compensation study. So really the biggest part of it was a competitive market review of base salary and total cash compensation, with really the focus being on base salary. So establishing competitive salary ranges for all positions within the city at that base salary level. We conducted a job analysis questionnaire, or JAQ for short. I will dive into that in a little more detail in a couple of slides. But basically, within that step, we reached out to each employee and got individual feedback from them on their job duties and responsibilities. We designed salary structures for the organization. So as a result of this, we've designed 2 salary structures for the organization, one for staff and then one for law enforcement. Benefits was a part of this. So we analyzed benefits individually and then also added benefits together to cash compensation to compare pay at the city to pay in the market on a total compensation basis. So all in, how does the city compare, but also how does it compare on those individual benefit line items as well as at the base salary level. A big part of this is also comparing, obviously, current employee pay at the city to the market. And so we ran through comparisons on calculating how pay compares, and we have a couple ratios that we'll see as we get through the presentation today. And then calculating plan implementation costs. So this is really the bottom line, right? What is it going to cost the city to implement these new market competitive ranges? And we'll finish with overall recommendations. So the core of what we're doing during the compensation study when we're comparing the city's jobs to the market is what we call market pricing. And so the definition for that is here on the screen: valuation of pay for all jobs in the external labor markets. So the valuation side is, during that piece of it, we're looking at published survey data or publicly available data, and then aggregating that statistical data together to figure out what that market range is. The for jobs piece, the most important takeaway here is that our process is a job-based process. So we are, comparing to market based on the job duties and responsibilities of each position, as well as education requirements, experience, specific knowledge, skills, and abilities. And we're using that information to match to the market. What we're not doing is just matching to the market based on title, because as I'm sure you're aware, different organizations have different ways of titling their positions. So, what one organization might call an accountant, another organization might call an accounting specialist or an accounting supervisor. So by really drilling into the duties being performed, we can eliminate any error that might occur when matching just based upon job title alone. And then in the external labor market, so that is looking at where the city is competing for talent. And there really are three labor market characteristics that define that labor market. Those are listed here on the next slide: size of organization, geographic location, and industry. Size of organization plays, the biggest, or I guess has the biggest influence at the top of the organization. So, the city manager, right? That compensation level going to be most affected by size of organization and some of the other leadership level positions. But as you move down the organization, pay or size of organization plays less of a role in those overall final numbers. If you think about an administrative assistant as an example, if the city were to, triple in size next year, right, you're not going to pay your administrative assistant a bunch more money. You're going to hire 2, 3 more of those positions to keep up with that increase in demand. But as you can see on the screen, the main size parameters that we look at are revenue and employees. From a geographic standpoint, where an organization is located, where you're competing for talent geographically can affect the salary levels of the jobs which you're competing for. So if you think about some of the larger cities, St. Louis, Kansas City, as an example, they're going to have generally higher salary levels than a mid-Missouri city, right? So we wanted to make sure in this analysis that the final data reflected the cost of labor, or in other words, salary levels in the local market. So the analysis that we conducted focused on the Ashland, Missouri and the surrounding areas. From an industry perspective, there are some jobs within the city that are found only in other municipal government agencies. And so for those positions in particular, we sort of are limited to comparing to jobs in other cities and governmental entities. There are also some jobs within the city that could be found in any organization: public sector, nonprofit organizations, for-profit, right? So the truer market for those types of roles is really broader than the governmental space. So we did tailor our approach based on the position and considered some of that broader market data for those jobs that are found more broadly within the market. The last piece of I guess the philosophical puzzle is market placement. So we established those 3 labor markets, right, relative to where the city is competing for talent. And then the question becomes, where within the spectrum of that market do we want to position pay for the city? And we think about the market as a spectrum, right? So there's sort of a middle of the market, there's a high end, there's a low end. And so in discussions with Kyle and Shelley at the beginning of the process, it was decided that the organization should match the market, which correlates to that 50th percentile within the market. The 50th percentile is the middle, also called the median. It's the point in the data where half of organizations pay more and half pay less. A note about that stated philosophy is that it's a very common compensation philosophy. About 85% of organizations choose to target that middle of the market as their stated philosophy. So the city is well within, what is typical with that stated 50th percentile comp philosophy. So a little bit more about the job analysis questionnaire. One of the key pieces of any compensation study is that we want to make sure we are, using the most up-to-date job information possible, so that the data is as relevant as it can be. And this questionnaire that we distributed to employees uh, essentially asks them to tell us about their job. So it would ask about the primary job purpose, as you can see here in this screenshot, the five most important or essential job responsibilities, education requirements, experience requirements, other specific knowledge, skills, and abilities required of the position. And so that was our way of getting employee input into the process and giving employees, a say in the analysis, but also our way to collect great real-time, up-to-date job information for each position included in the analysis. It was really a two-phased approach. One was an employee response phase, and then the second phase was an opportunity for supervisors to review employee responses, make additions, corrections, clarifications, and really served as an extra level of quality review before we use that information in our benchmarking process. So the other part of this, as we talked about, is looking at data, right? So we're comparing the organization's pay to the labor markets in which they're competing. Part of that piece of the study was a peer analysis. So we used data from the Missouri Municipal League, and we came up with specific peer groups to use as part of our comparison to the market. And we came up with two different peer groups. The first peer group you'll see is the peers based on operating budget. So these organizations were targeted based on their size relative to City of Ashland. And typically we're looking for organizations that are around half to two times the city's size. And this group was used for the leadership level within the organization. So top position, other leaders, because as I mentioned before, their compensation is much more closely tied to size of organization than any other positions within the city. The other peer group that we came up with was on the right side of the screen, peers based on proximity to Ashland. So these were all cities that are close geographically, right, to the city. And so we use these to capture, that local market for positions where size isn't really much of a concern. So the overall process, as I've mentioned, we evaluate job documentation. In this case, it was employee responses to the JAQ. And then we also had current job descriptions as well for consideration to fill in gaps where needed. The compensation data, as I mentioned, was that Missouri Municipal League peer data. We also have data in-house here within CBIZ, our proprietary survey database. So we use that to supplement that MML data, more so to pull in that broader industry look, right, for jobs that are found more broadly across the market. The job matching we discussed, the key there, like I said before, comparing duties and responsibilities to the market to come up with the most accurate comparisons. And then once we've matched all jobs to the market, we've pulled in the data, we have to age the data as well. So survey data by definition is backwards looking. It's collected at a certain point in time, typically in the past. And so to make sure that the data that we're using to make decisions for current salary levels and beyond is aligned with where we think salaries are in present day, we have to age that data forward. The factor that we used, as shown here on the slide, 3.3%. So after we've done all of that, right, it's time to summarize all of the data. And so we aggregate the data using percentiles, pulling in that 50th percentile that I mentioned for both base salary, total cash benefits, and then ultimately total compensation. Slide 11 is where we get our first glimpse at how pay at the city compares to the market. So we have two lines here. The blue line represents the City of Ashland's pay line. That's just the line of best fit. And then we have a green line, which represents the market pay line at the 50th percentile of the market. You can see on the axes, we have market-based salary across the horizontal axis, and then actual city salaries across the y-axis on the left-hand side. But right away, right, you can see that, hey, we've got the green line, which is the 50th percentile of the market. We've got the blue line, which is City of Ashland's pay, a little bit below that green line, which means pay is on average a little lower than the 50th percentile of the market, but very close, right? So I think what this tells us is that overall pay is pretty competitive with the market as it stands today. And when we get to the implementation analysis, it's going to be more about getting people to an appropriate position within the range rather than necessarily addressing individuals that are way out of whack with the market. For the most part, everyone's pretty close to that market competitive range, which is good. So after we've compiled all the data, then it's time for us to actually come up with those salary structures for the organization. So what a salary structure does is it groups jobs with similar market values together into the same salary range. That helps simplify compensation administration going forward, and also helps just promote internal equity and pay equity across the organization. So a salary structure overall is a series of grades that have minimums, midpoints, and maximums. Within the structure, the range minimum establishes attractive entry-level pay. The range midpoint, it aligns with that 50th percentile, the compensation philosophy for the organization. And then the range maximum establishes the maximum value that a job in that range can bring to the organization. So to put a visual to that written description, here is kind of what a salary structure would look like, right? We've got minimum, we've got a midpoint, we've got a maximum. And for the city, what we've done is we've designed step structures, which are very common, within other cities and within the public sector in general. Basically, a step structure divides the steps into a certain number of even increments, right? And so the way that employees advance through that range is typically one step per year. And so it's a set salary increase progression that the city can plan for on an annual basis, and also employees can plan for sort of what their salary progression will look like as time passes. The next two slides are showing the salary structures that we have designed. The first one you're looking at is for the staff individuals. The second one will be the law enforcement employees. So we've come up with a total of 10 grades here. You can see the minimums, midpoints, and maximums. You'll see a column called the range spread and midpoint differential. Range spread tells us how wide the ranges are. So that 20% as an example on grade 1 is the distance between the range minimum and maximum. Said a little bit differently, the maximum is 20% greater than that range 1 minimum. The midpoint differential is the distance or how far apart the ranges are. So that's the distance between the current grade midpoint and the previous grade midpoint. So looking at grades 1 and 2 as an example, we see a 7.5% midpoint differential. All that means is the midpoint of grade 2 is 7.5% greater than the midpoint of grade 1. And the way that we design these is based on the market data that we collect. So these steps, the differentials, the distances between the grades, the width of the ranges, the range spreads tie back to trends we see in the market data. You'll also see in the very right-hand column, the two last columns there, we've got number of steps. So that's how many, I guess, increments there are, pay increments there are within those ranges, starting at 9 steps for grade 1, and then up to 19 steps in the highest grade, grade 10. It does increase because those ranges are wider, so you need more steps to get through the entire range. And also, as you move up the organization, employees tend to spend more time in their job, and so we need kind of a wider range of salary progression to accommodate that dynamic. The last column is just the increase amount, so that just tells you the incremental amount between each step within the range. So looking at grade 1 as an example, the distance from one step to the next is $900 between each of those 9 steps. And that does increase as you move up the organization. The second structure that you see here is the law enforcement structure. So really only three grades specifically in the law enforcement structure. Those are the police reserve officer, the police officer, and the police sergeant. The police chief is actually in the other staff structure, but just so you can see the full hierarchy here and full department, we've pulled that police chief range into this slide just for informational purposes. But the same setup here, right? I mean, we've got minimums and points maximums. We have range spreads here, number of steps, and then the dollar increase of those steps as well for each range. Now, the way that we assign jobs to those ranges is a mathematical process. So we assign jobs based on each job's 50th percentile in relation to the range midpoints of each of the ranges. So this example that we have on the right side of the screen, we've got a sample job XYZ, and we have the market benchmark data for that job. It's at 35,455. So the way that we assign jobs is taking that market benchmark, 35,455, and determining which range midpoint is closest to that market 50th percentile data point. In this example, you can see that 35,455 is closest to the midpoint of grade 2, 35,618, and so that job is then slotted into a grade 2. So we run that for each position based on the market data that groups jobs together that have similar market values. And then from there, when we went through results with Kyle and Shelley, they had an opportunity to review, get back to us with any feedback, let us know if there are any final adjustments that need to be made for internal equity before we finalize those grade assignments. So exhibit or slide 17 takes our analysis one step further. So up until this point, we've been looking at where each job is valued within the market. This looks at where each staff member is currently paid within the proposed ranges. So you'll see that we do have a few outliers down here. These blue lines represent the range boundaries. So the left blue line is the range minimums. The right blue line reflects the range maximums. And then that center line there, that center axis, is the range midpoint. And you can see those grades 1 through 10 there as well. So there are 4 employees that were below the proposed ranges that we came up with. So one of our initial recommendations is that the city bring pay for those 4 individuals at least to the range minimum to make sure that we're getting them within that market competitive range. If the city were to leave them below those minimums, those employees would be at higher risk of leaving the organization and going somewhere else to make more money. There was 1 individual above the maximum. For anyone above the maximum, we recommend pay be frozen for the time being, but that the value of their increase can still be provided in the form of a lump sum in lieu of that salary increase. The next slide is the law enforcement employee range penetration. So same setup, right? We've got blue lines, which represent the range minimum and maximum. The left is the minimum, the right is the maximum. And then we have green dots, which show where employees are paid within those ranges. You can see right away, everyone on the law enforcement side currently already paid within that market competitive range. So for them, it's just a matter of, is where they're paid appropriate, or do any adjustments need to be made based on maybe experience within the role? The financial impact to this analysis is shown here. Before I go through those numbers, I will mention that we calculate what we call a compa ratio, which is simply each employee's current salary divided by the corresponding market-based salary 50th percentile. And so when we ran that calculation for every employee within the city and averaged up each individual compa ratio, the overall compa ratio comes out to 93.9%. So what that means is that pay is on average, excuse me, 93.9% of the 50th percentile of the market, or said a little bit differently, about 6.1% below the 50th percentile. So with implementing the step structure, the biggest thing is really getting everyone to a specific step within the new salary system. So to do that, we have some implementation, right? Not everyone is already paid on a step within the structure, so we have to get employees to a particular step. So the way that we approach that is assigning people at least to a position within the range that is closest to their current pay level without resulting in a reduction of pay. So for the staff in green here, this first column, of the 15 employees in that structure, the total amount to get everyone to that position on a step within the range is $56,217. And that's 6.3% of payroll. And some of that expenditure there is bringing those employees up to that minimum of the range as well. And then on the law enforcement side, we've got 8 employees in that structure. The total is a little bit less there, only 5,517 to get everyone to a step within the range, and that's 1.4% of law enforcement payroll. The benefits piece, as I mentioned earlier, was another piece of this project. When we look at benefits, we look at 3 primary categories. And those are medical insurance, paid time off, and then retirement. So the key takeaways here are noted on slide 20. With medical insurance, we look at both the total cost that the city is paying towards those benefits, but also we look at cost share. So one thing that did stick out to us is the cost share at the employee level for employee-only coverage is very generous. This with the city covering 100% of that premium on behalf of employees. The city's positioned really generous relative to the broader market there. So in other words, richer relative to the market. Paid time off, we look at vacation days offered, sick days, and holidays. Looking at sort of the whole vacation accrual system within the city compared to what's typical, we found that vacation is above market on average across those different accrual buckets. Sick days and personal days, about right in line with market. And then holidays provided just a little bit below market, city offering 1 day less than what would be typical amongst similar cities. Retirement, the way that we look at this is from a cost standpoint and also a benefit standpoint. So one thing that we noticed right away is that the costs that the city is paying for retirement for that pension plan are low, right? Much lower than what we would typically see from other cities in the same pension plans. The second takeaway, employee paid retirement contributions, which is 4% of base salary or higher than market. When we looked at the market, vast majority of organizations are covering that employee contribution, and I just paying that for employees, so there wouldn't be any employee commitment there. And then the last takeaway on the retirement side is the employee retirement benefit. That L7 is on average below the surrounding cities. The most common that we saw is L6, which offers a little bit more generous retirement benefit, after retirement or during retirement. So slide 21 ties everything together. This is where we're looking at total compensation. So same idea as the chart before, except instead of looking just at base salary, we're looking at total compensation, which brings all of those individual components together: base salary, benefits, which is that health insurance, retirement, and paid time off. So you'll notice the lines a little bit further apart. The biggest, I think, contributing factor there was the low retirement costs, right? So most organizations are contributing more towards retirement. And that, when looking at the city's costs, it's mostly an advantage to have lower costs, right, on the retirement side. But also the benefit seems to be a little bit lower as well. And I know Kyle and team are exploring some options there to maybe help enrich that benefit for employees. So of course, we've gone through the same process with Kyle and Shelley, and so we met with them to review, the full detailed results, walk them through recommendations, findings, takeaways, and of course, modeled all of the implementation strategies, costs, et cetera. So in summary, when we look at overall cost to implement, and this is the cost from both that staff and law enforcement side, the total comes out to just over $61,000, and that represents 4.8% of total payroll within the city. So the recommendations, of course, we want the city to implement the pay structures, right? That's going to be how the city will stay competitive from a salary perspective, next year and beyond, and move employees to the appropriate step within the salary range. So, the numbers that we've proposed already are really more of a baseline recommendation, and then Kyle and Shelley will have the opportunity to review employees' current experience, past performance, and see if any additional, step increases might be warranted so that all employees are paid appropriately within the range commensurate with experience and performance in the role. One of the ways that we'll support this city going forward is through our annual salary planning letter. So one of our key recommendations is that the organization, the city, increase the range minimums, midpoints, and maximums on an annual basis. So the recommendations that we've provided to the city currently are going to be good for the upcoming year. But the year after that, right, the market will have moved. So the market's always moving. Salaries are also always increasing little by little each year. So if the city does not continue to increase those range minimums, midpoints, and maximums, the compensation system is going to fall behind market, and then you run the risk of potentially losing employees due to lower pay, right? So what we will do is we'll send Kyle and team a planning letter each year, and within that letter, we'll provide recommendations for how much we think the city should increase their salary ranges to keep pace with market movement over time. The other data point that we'll provide in that letter is a recommendation for salary increases, right? So what amount of budget should the city set aside for actually giving salary increases to employees? And so that will just help the organization, the city, plan for salary increases, stay market competitive over time, and keep employees, retain employees, and reward them for their work at the city. One key note about the data that we'll provide is that it is based on cost of labor. In other words, salaries and wage levels, not cost of living. Cost of living is separate, right? That's going to be the cost of gas, rent, eggs, and bread, right, et cetera. Whereas cost of labor is separate from that, and it's how much our salary is moving. Now, usually when cost of living is increasing, right, cost of labor is also increasing, but it's not a one-to-one relationship. Our other recommendation is that the city do a study like this and compare to the market every 3 to 4 years. So those update factors that we'll provide on an annual basis do a good job of approximating what the market is doing from year to year. But once you start to hit 3, 4 years down the line, what ends up happening is you have different jobs increasing at different rates. And so a graphic illustration of that concept is here at the bottom of this slide. You'll see we've got the overall market, which is that dark blue line in the middle. We've got job A, light blue, on the bottom there, and then we've got job B in gray on the top. So really what we see here is we see job A increasing, wages increasing or even decreasing a little bit at a rate that's slower than the average market. And then we have job B, the job B salary levels increasing at a rate that's higher than the average market. So by the time you get to year 3, year 4, you can see gray line, light blue line, pretty far apart. And so what that means is grades may have moved. It's also a good idea to, like I said, do another deep dive, make sure that all positions within the city are still market competitive, and that their ranges are market competitive as well. All right, so that gets us to the end. I guess from here we can open it up for any questions.
Any questions for Ryan? Ryan, they are out of questions, so if we
Okay.
via email, I'll relay those to you. Obviously, a lot for them to digest and review, so we'll give them an opportunity
Yeah.
to look at that at home and forward on some questions.
Yeah. Sounds good. Let me know. Happy to help as those come up.
All right, thank you for being here tonight and providing that presentation.
Yeah, you're welcome. Happy to do it. Have a good night.
Moving on, appointments to boards and commissions, I see none. Scheduled public comments, we have none. Just a reminder, all public comments need to be into the city clerk by Wednesday before the meeting date. Public hearing, we have none. Introductions and first readings, none. Pretty light agenda. Old business, none. Moving on to new business, resolution 2024-63, a resolution accepting the proposal for insurance brokerage service. Staff report, please.
On October 9th of 2024, the city published a request for proposal for insurance brokerage services. The city received 2 proposals, one from Winter Dent and Company and the other one for First State Insurance Agency. For fiscal year 26, the city published that. Every 5 years, the city puts out a request for proposals for coverage pertaining to property and casualty coverage, as is best practice. After reviewing the 2 proposals from Winter Dent and First State Insurance Company, the city has used both of the firms in the past and currently utilizes Winter Dent and Company for its health benefits and First State Insurance Agency for our current property and casualty coverage. After reviewing the proposal, staff recommend First State Insurance Agency and continuing our relationship with them. Our broker, Curtis Anderson, is here from First State Insurance Agency if you have any questions for him. But we use Tokyo Marine right now. They have been very good to us. We have no complaints. Curtis has come a couple times and done training. He's assisted with, us with different types of training and getting us on board with some safety regulations as well. So we're very pleased with them. So we recommend approving the resolution to retain First State Insurance Agency as our property and casualty broker.
Any questions for Shelley?
Any
Any
questions
questions
for
for
Kurt?
Curtis?
Do you have any additional comments or anything?
No, my comments would simply be, we've been working with the city for 5 years. First State has about 30 different municipalities throughout Missouri that we're working with. So we like this space, and so we've enjoyed and appreciated the last 5 years, and certainly looking forward to continuing to partner with you guys on all that front.
Okay. Can I get a motion approving resolution 2024-63, a resolution accepting for a proposal for insurance brokerage service?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 2024-64, a resolution authorizing the mayor to sign a 6-month combined financial statement. Staff report, please.
I did not include a staff report with this because this is a mandatory obligation that we have as a municipality to report and advertise our 6-month combined financials. So it is completed by me and reviewed and signed off by you. And Kyle recommended that we do a resolution so the board can authorize you to sign it.
Can I get a motion approving 2024-64, a resolution authorizing the mayor to sign 6-month combined financial statement?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 2024-65, a resolution regarding the site plan for Southern Boone YMCA parking lot. Staff report, please.
Moved along so quick, I almost lost my place. This is a request for approval of a revised site plan. The owner of this property is Jefferson City Area Young Men's Christian Association, and the submitting engineering firm is Central Missouri Professional Services Incorporated. Christina Lubert of Lubert Engineering reviewed this revised site plan. So I think everybody pretty much knows where the YMCA is, so I don't need to go over those details. It's commercially zoned. So the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended the original YMCA site plan for approval on February 11th of 2020. This revised site plan has proposed additions to the parking lot. The larger addition to the north, for those of you following along, will consist of 49 parking spaces and an entrance exit from South Main Street. The smaller addition to the south will include 18 spaces and additional space for bus parking. The white area with the dashed spaces on the east side of the building represents existing parking. 2 ADA spaces will be added to the north side of the building entrance. A traffic study was done in 2020 in partnership with the proposed Ashland Commons parcel to the south. Because the parking is the only addition to this site plan, as part of this phase, staff felt that a traffic study wasn't warranted. No additional traffic will be created by this phase. The main purpose of the additional parking is to accommodate special events. The existing detention basin along South Main Street was designed to accommodate the additional impervious area proposed in this phase. There was concern by the Planning and Zoning Commission regarding the vagueness of approval in reference to the detention area. Christina's approval is this: while the existing detention does not meet the letter of the code, it does meet the intent of the code. The purpose of the detention is to retain water to mitigate environmental harm and hazards caused by excessive water runoff during rain events. The existing detention will meet this requirement. So after careful consideration, staff recommends approval of the submitted revised site plan for construction, as it appears to have met the intended requirements of the city code. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommended conditional approval on 2 counts. One was that staff get clarification from Christina surrounding the details of the detention, which I think has been done. Detention approval, and 2, that the site plan be corrected to clearly define the intent of the site plan submitted. The revised site plan is included in this report, and clarification of the detention approval was achieved to the satisfaction of the commissioners that had the concern. And there is written the why. If anyone has any additional questions or needs more information.
Any questions for staff? No. Can I get a motion approving resolution 2024-65, a resolution regarding the site plan for Southern Boone YMCA parking lot?
I'll make a motion.
Can I have a second, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 2024-66, a resolution authorizing the purchase of a truck body.
Mr. Mayor, members of the board, before you this evening is consideration of approval for the purchase of a truck body for the new Ford F-550 that was purchased for the sewer division this year. This truck body was planned and approved in the FY25 budget, but there have been some changes with the numbers. Essentially, we recently completed a competitive bid process, and we received 1 bid submittal. The bid submittal came in at $9,495, and we had originally budgeted $5,500. The discrepancy is due to the type of bed that we bid for, as it was discovered that the original bed that we budgeted for would allow for the truck to be used for rather restrictive purposes. It would only been used for towing for the majority of the time. That being said, if we went for a tradesman style bed, it allows that truck to be utilized as a dual purpose vehicle, both as a service truck and as a tow vehicle. In conversations internally with other staff, we've determined that the best course of action for this purchase would be to utilize an asset transfer between the Streets Division and the Sewer Division. As you may recall, we purchased a flatbed back when we first stopped using Republic Services for our biosolids disposal. That flatbed truck body was placed on an existing Streets Division truck, which the Sewer Division uses as they need to for that transportation, those transportation needs. Through an asset transfer, the Streets Division would take ownership of that existing flatbed, and then they would transfer $3,995 to the Sewer Division Capital Equipment Fund. Then those funds, along with the original $5,500 that was budgeted, could be used to complete this purchase.
Fancy math there, big boy.
Here's mud. Ultimately, ideally, it would have been easy just to come back and stick with the original budget, but this opportunity presented itself to allow us to use that truck in a more efficient manner.
In summary, you're selling a piece of equipment to the Streets Division.
Correct.
Keep it simple.
Any questions for Jane?
Follow the card.
She's a big shell game.
Public Works money.
Alright, can I get a motion approving resolution 2024-66? A resolution to authorize the purchase of a truck bed.
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to reports, One thing I have is a follow-up on the boardroom as far as going live. Are we dug into any more of that?
I've sent pricing over to you guys. I just need some feedback on what direction you want to run.
Gotcha. And that is it. City Administrator report.
City staff met with Consolidated Water this morning. As some of you may know, we have a pretty good working relationship with Consolidated Water. We also have a territorial service agreement with Consolidated Water. That was a 5-year agreement that is set to expire next year. It does have automatic 1-year renewals until anyone says otherwise. So we just kind of briefly met to discuss where Ashland sees ourselves going in terms of water service. We let them know that we're getting ready to kick off our water master plan and would intend to consider consolidated service territory as part of that master plan study to determine where it makes more sense for Ashland to serve within our agreed upon service territory boundary, or if that service territory boundary needs to move, and just continue to foster that constructive working relationship with Consolidated Water. Park master plan was presented to the park board last night. We'll get some feedback from them, and we will have a public workshop scheduled at some point in the future once we get that feedback rolled up. It'll be pretty much the end of that project. It'll come to the board for approval and acceptance, and we'll start moving forward with how to budget for those improvements. Website, I know we've been talking about that a lot the last couple of meetings. We have wrapped up our initial training with the essential staff that will be working on the website. Basically, all the department heads will have some level of accountability to the new website to upload their documents, whether it be the packet like this evening that Darla put on the new website, or James' monthly report. He can put that on his departmental page in addition to his overall management of the regular stuff that we put on the website. We don't have a go live date set in stone quite yet. It'll be after the first of the year at this point, so staff is just kind of working in the background to clean up their pages, upload any documents that are still missing, or create new forms or documents that we've identified that we would like to add prior to that going live. But looks good. I think everyone generally understands how to use it and implement it, and I think it's going to be a really good asset for us going forward. We're excited for it, and that is all I have.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Kyle? Moving on to city attorney's report.
On election day, Proposition A passed. That is dealing with minimum wage and paid sick leave. It does not apply to cities, so we don't need to make any changes for that. And then I have stuff enclosed.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Todd? Moving on to police chief's report.
Biggest news we have is we did get our another officer hired, started the academy on November 4th. Seems to be going very well so far, which leaves us only one full-time opening. And we've got a very quality applicant right now we're working on for that. And you'll be hearing more about that because we may be having something to talk about for the board, but for right now, we're optimistic that we'll get up to full staff, which will be very, very good, help us balance out our days, and be a good thing. So I have nothing else, unless there's questions for me. You should all have our stat report for the month.
Thank you, sir.
Yep, thank you.
Community Development Director's Report.
Just ask if you have any questions.
You know, after all that doom and gloom, you are getting pretty close to hitting your residential permit target.
What doing gloom? Just go by the numbers. I will add one more thing on that.
says Eeyore. Well, okay.
Just south of O'Reilly's, there is
Dirt work.
a dirt pad, but there has been nothing proposed at this time. So, just to clarify that, I've gotten a lot of questions about it. So.
The bulldozer for decoration.
Well, that's a friend of mine's. He's also a developer in town. You may know him, but I mentioned my name.
Close friend. Thank you, sir. Moving on to Treasurer's Monthly Report.
I don't have anything.
Thank you, ma'am. Moving on to Board of Aldermen. Alderman Vocart.
No report.
Alderwoman Ravencraft.
No report.
Alderwoman Colbert.
Just a couple of things, like Kyle said, we had the park board meeting last night, there weren't enough members there to vote on anything, but we did have the presentation about the, park study. There was 301 responses, which they felt was a really good response, especially given the size of our community, so that was really exciting to hear. Like Kyle said, they kind of have some preliminary plans, and they're doing cost estimates right now and budgeting, and another public work, so a few revisions still before we have like a set plan. But there was a lot of discussion about it. And then just December 6th is the parade, so line up at the elementary primary school at 5:30, judging at 6, the parade begins at 6:30. And then the Christmas tree lighting to follow at the park here. And, we just discussed planning for 2025 and the events that are coming up, and I know the park board is interested in updating some of the Christmas decorations that go on the poles here. So talking about possibly doing some kind of fundraiser or something to help collect some funds to invest in that, so. But those should be going up on Monday. That's it.
Thank you. Alderman Bell.
No report.
Alderman Wilson.
No report.
And Alderman Lewis.
No report.
Moving on to general comments from the public. I see none. Can I get a motion to go into closed session to discuss chapter 610.21 legal actions?
There's a typo in there, it's 021. So
Zero.
moved.
That's correct.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
That's a roll call.
All roll call. Alderman Lewis.
Aye.
Alderman Wilson.
Aye.
Alderman Bell.
Aye.
Alderman Colbert.
Aye.
And Alderman Ravencraft.
Aye.
And Alderman Bogart.
Aye.
secret. Getting younger every day.
Can I get a motion to go back into open session?
So moved.
Second. Roll call vote. Alderman Vocart?
Aye.
Alderman Ramcraft?
Aye.
Alderman Colbert?
Aye.
Alderman Bell?
Aye.
Alderman Wilson?
Aye.
And Alderman Lewis?
Aye.
All right, back in open session. Todd, would you like to proceed?
Mr. Mayor, the staff would request a motion to proceed as discussed in the closed session.
So moved.
I'll second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We'll get on it. Thank you.
All right, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That was exciting.
Like that motion got fourth and fifth and sixth, they're like, yeah.